Let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Cerini Connection webinar. I'm Ken Cerini from Cerini Associates. Thanks so much for joining us. Today's session is maximizing Microsoft 365 for organizational efficiency. Many organizations already have these tools, but aren't fully leveraging them. This leads to inefficiencies and missed opportunities. I'm excited to be joined by Mike Golub, CFO and Vice President of Sales of Miss Excel, who will share practical strategies to help your team streamline workflows, improve collaboration, and work smarter. Mike, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Ken. I'm honored to be here.
Great. Let's kind of jump in. So a lot of organizations, as I said, already have Microsoft 365. So why do you think so many of them still struggle with efficiency and collaboration issues?
I think there's a big difference between having it and being efficient in it. I would say the biggest thing is that access doesn't necessarily equal skills. So they might have it, but they don't necessarily have the proper training for it. And most people just don't even know where to begin, let alone how to use the more in-depth features. So I think that's typically where the differentiator is.
I mean, you talk about training, and obviously any tool that you have, you only become proficient with it by using it and growing with it. Where's the best place, or where have you seen people being able to, enhance their skills with respect to this? Where can people go to get that training and those skills?
Sure. So Microsoft is everywhere. Everyone has seen a plethora of resources for it, I'm sure, from YouTube to all different sources. But I would say that most people, what they're looking for is a streamlined source of education, because we all know what happens when you go on YouTube for a video and then next thing you know, you're watching, I don't know, off-roading videos from Utah, right? So typically that's, again, when people look for a more streamlined approach and people reach out to us. That's what we do. We offer streamlined education approach that's fun and engaging so that people can learn skills quickly.
So when you kind of think through some of this, there's always that aspect of you don't know what you don't know, right? I mean, so I'm sure many people think that they are using Microsoft 365, maybe not to its fullest potential, but maybe more than they actually are. So what are some of the signs that maybe an organization or a company is underutilizing the 365 tools they're already paying for?
What a key word, underutilizing. So funny you say that. I was reading recently how Microsoft had an internal research study that shared how 80% of all Microsoft Office features go completely unused. And what's interesting about that is most people spend more time in Microsoft Office than they do with their own family. So to be spending that much time inside a product where most people's livelihood actually depends on it and their skills with it, but they're not using most of the features, it's a little eye-opening. And in terms of some of the signs that we see, there's manual workflows or manual workarounds that people call it, where you have, say, a team of 10 people and they're all doing the same thing just in a different way. There's constant reworks rather, where people they'll send a spreadsheet to someone and then that person has to go back in, rework it to get the answer, or even just identifying errors. So we've seen all the above, but I would say it all bubbles down into the complex of frustration. People are realizing that there's a faster way to do it. There's a better way to do it. They may not know exactly how, or maybe they've learned it once, but it didn't quite stick. And they start to realize, well, hey, there is a better, faster way, and maybe I should look for a pathway to learn that.
So when we think about the Microsoft 365 suite, right? I mean, we're talking about Microsoft Office, we're talking about Microsoft Excel, we're talking about Copilot, we're talking about what? And how do people know which is the right tool to use in each circumstance?
Sure. So let's be honest, there are pretty complex tools within each of those programs, and how to know which one is the right one for you. So I would begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey once said, but I would think about, well, hey, what do I want to get from this? Do I want to have a presentation that is compelling and I already have my idea now, I just want to effectively communicate it? Or am I still looking for the details and the data and I'm not quite sure what the trends are? So it depends with what do you actually want to convey to the people that you'll ultimately be sharing this information with? And do you already have that idea or that data lined up and proven, or are you still trying to figure out, I'm not quite sure what it is, but I just think that I should share this information.
So, in terms of uh, kind of the different tools out there, actually, I wish we could do like a show of hands sort of thing here, and maybe you guys can throw it in the chat. Um, how many of you guys are using Microsoft Copilot? I'd love to get an answer for that because, I mean, Excel is a powerful tool. Word can do so much, but it's also amazing in terms of um, what you can use Copilot for. So maybe, Mike, you can talk a little bit about some of the places where you've seen um, dramatic efficiencies created through some of the aspects of Microsoft 365. If you can kind of explain that a little bit.
Absolutely. So, in my biased opinion, my favorite feature, and it may not be the most sleekest or most attractive feature to everybody, but the ability to summarize is my absolute favorite. That saves me the most time, whether it's a long email thread and I've just got looped in the middle of it, or even just data where I'm going through a spreadsheet with 5 or 10,000 rows. And I used to have to do a full analysis to actually understand what's going on and identifying trends. Now I can summarize that data quickly and make better sense of it. So that is my favorite feature. With that being said, the opportunities are endless. I think Copilot has come a really long way and it's amazing. And it's definitely something that people should be exploring in their workplace because it does speed up efficiency dramatically.
I use it every single day, at least 3 or 4 times an hour, if not
Yeah.
more. And what's cool is you can just have a conversation with it and introduce information and then just keep asking it questions, asking it to clarify, asking it to until you get what it is you're looking for in terms of a document and or research or whatever. I mean, you still have to verify the accuracy. So I find myself kind of telling Copilot what the scenario is and what I'm trying to accomplish, and then making it provide me with sites for where it got the information from so I can verify it. And
Mhm.
I've called it out on some stuff too. And it says, yeah, you're right. That was a little aggressive or a little wrong. So you do have to kind of pay attention to the information that's coming, but it is such an amazing tool.
It is. Yeah. And I would say you hit on a really important point there. So just to kind of double click on that, but with AI, not just Copilot in general, not just Copilot, but with AI in general, you do have to watch out for hallucinations. And for people who haven't been that experienced in the space, basically that means like errors, right? AI makes errors just like humans do. And I would say one of the biggest issues that we see and why companies reach out to us is that their teammates are relying, excuse me, too much on tasks just being done for them through AI in general. And they're starting to realize, wait a minute, there's an error. This didn't come off right. This isn't accurate. And it threw off the whole analysis. And for anyone who has any experience in Excel, we all know that moving a decimal point one spot to the right or to the left makes all the difference in the world for the whole spreadsheet. So I will say that it's important that you double check the output um, and also prompt it in a way where you could confidently feel great about what the information that's going to give you.
So, kind of going back to the train of thought we were on, where do you most commonly see organizations kind of wasting time um, when they're working with Microsoft 365 because maybe they're not using it as strategically as they should?
We see it all over the board again. So I would say the number one thing is that people are not really up to speed on the latest ways to analyze data, let's say, as an example, or the latest features and capabilities to create a presentation. And not to use the same examples again, but it's important that people are constantly looking to upskill themselves in these areas because the technology evolves so fast. New features are being released all the time. And what we're seeing is that people are still relying on their old ways of doing things and not keeping up with the times. I mean, I would be willing to bet that technology has changed since we even started this discussion. And there's been some updates, some new feature out there, and some in some products. So it is important to hone in on your skills, especially when you spend so much time with these products.
Yeah, one of the things that we do and we recommend to our clients is to like we use Microsoft Teams also.
Mhm.
So like we use like the full suite of Microsoft and we use it on a regular basis. And we have a Teams chat set up with the different software applications within Microsoft. And we have a different chat for each one of them. So, like when it comes to Copilot or Excel, if somebody comes up with a new thing that they're using it for that created an efficiency, they post it within the team chat so that the whole firm can understand what efficiencies people are developing. Because you may not have thought of something and somebody else did, and it's cool then to go back and see what people have used it for and the results they've come up with.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting to see the different usages of these products. I mean, we work with about 450 organizations now, from the US military to Kraft Heinz to dozens of nonprofits and even government organizations. And even though, the military uses it to analyze all different types of data for their helicopters and whatnot, and then you have nonprofits who use it for maybe membership data. They're all typically using similar strategies, just with different data sets. And going back to your example with Teams, one thing that our clients love to do is, and I've seen an amazing result from this, is that they'll have each person, say on a given day of the week, on a Monday or whatever it may be, share the one skill or the one tip that they've learned recently that's totally changed their workflows and helped them become much more efficient and productive. And I think that's something everyone could do. And when you share that with your team, imagine the impact when it's multiplied out from not just you, but to a team of 10, 20, 100 people. It's incredible for the organization. So I love that idea.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have kind of uh, organizational shared learning and shared knowledge. And the more that organizations can kind of develop platforms where they encourage and they share that information with the rest of the organization, it's only going to make the organization more efficient and stronger.
Oh, I 100% agree.
Yeah. Somebody, Joseph posted a question. He says, my experience has been that Copilot is resource intensive, especially for computers that do not have an NPU in addition to the traditional CPU and GPU, thereby slowing down the computer generally across many apps. Most computers 2 years older or more do not have an NPU. Any suggestions to reduce its footprints?
Huh, that's a great question, Joseph. My answer is I don't have the answer for you right now. I I will
Right,
look into
we'll
that.
be sending out the recording of this. If maybe you can track out an answer, we can kind of post that with the recording when we send it out.
Absolutely. I'd love to look into that. Thank you for sharing that, Joseph.
So going back to the discussion for leaders who want to improve efficiency, what are the highest impact 365 habits or workflows to focus on first?
Yeah, so I personally like to think about, well, which ones do you use most? If you could save even an hour per day per employee over, an organization with a few hundred employees, that makes all the difference in the world. That's like adding full-time people with no additional overhead. So that would be the first thing I would look at is, well, are my people mostly in Excel? Are they mostly in Teams or whatever it may be, right? And then from there, I would think about their processes that they're doing manually. What hasn't been automated yet? Or even a part of that process. Can we automate a part of that process? And I would dig into that particular bit of the process because, like I said, even the smallest differences make a huge impact at the end of the day. So that's typically where I would start to think about that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, from an analysis perspective, and it might be different within each team within an organization,
Sure.
right? So the fiscal side of things, or maybe purchasing or stuff, which maybe is more what do you call it? Excel intensive, where there's a much deeper need for Excel. That could be a place to use Excel. in a development office of a nonprofit organization, a combination of maybe Word and Copilot to
Right.
kind of help write letters or go into databases and pull information to figure out how to communicate effectively with a donor. Or if you're going out there and doing marketing, it might be a combination of Copilot, Excel to track ROI, and what do you call it, PowerPoint.
I will say on that topic, if you're still using the same skills and relying on the same workflows that you were using 2 or 3 years ago, there is a better way now. So I would first take a step back and say, if you've been in your role for more than, say, 2 years, and let's just say you've been doing the same processes for the same reporting monthly report, right? Just know that there is a better way now. So take a step back. It might be worth taking a minute to just research. This is what I do. Is there a better way to do this? And I'd be willing to, bet that there is.
That's a good point. That's a valuable point, I think, because you are looking at, situations where people kind of get caught in patterns and they
Mhm.
get familiar
Human
and
nature.
comfortable with how they do things. And I agree. I think you need to constantly challenge what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Yeah. Elon Musk once said, question everything. And I live by that. When I am creating a new workflow for my team or I'm creating a new product, I think, well, just because it's been done this way in the past, does that mean that that's the right way? Does that mean that's the way we should still be doing it? And even if I can tweak one thing that saves a bit of time, a bit of energy, and lowers the frustration, we'll call it, it's worth it 100% of the time.
So, what can we do for our staff? And I know you talked about training already, but obviously we want to make sure we're getting the proper ROI. So if we're going to invest in training, we want to get those meaningful productivity gains that come from whatever it is we're going to do. What are maybe those two or three or four things that we should be doing, whether it be in Excel, Teams, Outlook, Copilot, whatever? That is going to maybe help develop those more meaningful productivity gains.
So, in terms of training, what I would look for is something with a measurable approach. There was also research that's been published recently where it says that the average attention span on a screen now is 47 seconds. So, most trainings out there don't stick. Whether they're an hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, most of them just don't stick because human nature now, our attention span has evolved to actually become shorter, and
I'm sorry, what
people
was that? I
are
wasn't paying attention.
well, I'm glad I got you at this point then. So their attention spans have evolved to become shorter, and people are actively looking for ways to distract themselves when they're doing something that's not fun or engaging. So that's why we've actually placed special emphasis and focus on creating fun and engaging training that's not your typical course or your typical thing that you just have to get through. It's almost like reading a boring book. How far do you actually get through that book before you put it down and realize this is not what I should be doing? So that's why I would say the biggest thing is fun, engaging, relatable, but also measurable. We all want an ROI on the investment. So you want to be able to have some visibility into what your people are doing in the training, how far along they've come, how actively are they using it, and how they feel about it too, because it's got to be applicable to their everyday role versus just training that's just out there.
So then how do you monitor the results that come from it, right? Because if I'm going to spend the money on a training, as you just said, you want to understand or get feedback in terms of what people are doing. So how should I be monitoring a training after I go through that training to determine if I am getting that ROI that I'm looking for?
Yeah. So assuming that you're leading a team at this point, I would do two things. One, I would actively reach out to your teammates to see how are they doing with the training and do they feel like they're saving time. And personally, I would even go to the point where maybe they log their biggest task that they did before this training and they log how much time it took them and then go back and revisit it after the training just to see, is it taking less time? Is it making them feel more comfortable with doing it and confident? And then the other thing too with ROI is I would also have your teammates share going back to that idea before, share the ideas that are working for them across the team because realistically, if it's working for them and there's someone else in a similar role, it should be working for them too. So that's one way to really measure the impact, but also see the impact spread across the entire team.
Do you find often that maybe people are too close to the tasks that they perform to be able to identify where an efficiency can be created, and maybe it makes sense to have someone else kind of look at what they're doing to see if they can find it?
I think that that's one of the greatest lessons in life, not just in Microsoft Office, but everywhere. So an outsider's perspective is, in my opinion, always very valuable. And yes, sometimes you could be too close to the task, but at the same time, your opinion also lies in the fact that you know where the frustrations are. You know where you typically know where the analysis is thrown off, or you know that this is taking you too long, just to give you an idea. So you don't necessarily have to have the answer today, but I think it's important that you do take a step back and you look at your process from a holistic point of view and realize these are the areas where I really feel like I could, I hate to use this pun, but excel and level up my skills to speed up the process. And if you don't know, share with your teammates. Ask what they're doing. I think it's important that we brainstorm ideas together. And again, go back to the whole idea of just sharing skills and ideas that'll help the organization overall.
I think at times one of the things that we find is that, as I said earlier, people get kind of caught up in what they do and how they do it,
Mhm.
and they get comfortable. So, again, how do you, even through training or whatever, and I understand I can train my staff, and then a week later they're doing the same thing they were doing
Right.
because that's how they learned it, that's what they're comfortable with. So kind of what separates organizations kind of that successfully improved productivity with Microsoft 365 from those that never seem to really get that traction or any real traction, even if they try to implement change through trainings and things like that. I mean, how do you make it sticky?
Right. So people like to stick to the familiar. We're creatures of habits, and I totally understand that. Where it becomes sticky is when they realize how much time they're leaving on the table and how that time can be better spent. So I think that it comes down to two things. One is realizing what is the issue, where can I save time? But two, as a leader of your organization, you really want to convey that to the point where they realize how else can I better apply that time? Even if it means leaving work early and spending more time with your family, whatever it means for you. I think it's important that we learn the skills that up level our workflows and whether or not we use that time to become more efficient or productive, or even just enjoy ourselves more. Maybe that means that your day is a little less hectic and you can take a little more time for lunch, whatever that means to you. But how does it be going back to how does it become sticky? Again, it's conveying the, I would say the cost of inaction, the cost of not learning it.
I think what would be interesting is if anybody wants to throw into the chat maybe some ideas that they've implemented using any Microsoft Office tool to create efficiencies within their business or their organization so that, again, we can share. I know we talked about that as a concept within the business, but it would be kind of cool with, 37 people on right now
Yeah.
to kind of share some of what you guys have come up with in terms of ideas to create efficiencies within your business operations surrounding Microsoft 365. So that would be kind of cool if people want to take the time and throw that in while we're having a conversation here, and we can kind of talk about some of those things. Um, Again, we're looking, or everybody wants, better outputs, fewer errors, more time saving, as you were just talking about. How do we as leaders kind of help to ensure that that stuff is happening?
It's a great
I don't,
question.
I don't know. Nobody's throwing anything into the chat, so I guess nobody's come up with any efficiencies.
They're testing your ability to think on your feet, new questions, right? So how do they as leaders ensure that that's happening? I would say don't settle, don't become complacent with your team. Um, Again, going back to what I was saying before about how there is a better way than what your team was doing 2 years ago now. So I would say constantly looking for places to upskill your team and ways to upskill your team. And one of those ways, I would say whichever direction you choose, just make sure that it's fun and that people actually enjoy doing it. Because the last thing that you want is to come up with a solution that nobody actually wants to do because it's like pulling their eyes out of their head. So the biggest thing would really make sure that you have an effective and an efficient training in place, but it's something that people are actually looking to do. Because we all know as leaders, when it's your team member's idea, or at least it feels like it's their idea, they're more apt to do it and take full advantage of it.
With, as you mentioned earlier, with software changing on a regular basis, I mean, Microsoft 365 continues to um, release new aspects of their program and everything. Um, how do organizations stay on top of the changes that are happening within the software? That can kind of help them because something that they did, last month or the month before that maybe didn't work or didn't yield the results they were looking for, obviously can. And if someone does have ideas or places, is there a way that they can communicate that effectively with Microsoft to kind of try to get that incorporated into the software?
Great question. So, one way that you could do it for free is if you have social media, follow us on social media. We post tips all the time from what we're seeing across millions of people. It's just Miss Excel at social on social media, but also in terms of communicating that with Microsoft, um, I don't know the best way, just to be honest, I don't know the best way for the general public to communicate that with Microsoft directly, but we're related to Microsoft in terms of being Cat's a five-time Microsoft MVP. So if you do have any ideas or thoughts, feel free to share them with us. We meet at Microsoft headquarters a few times a year with their executive team just to see what's coming down the pike. So we'd be happy to relay any information that you're seeing or thoughts that you have.
So you said you push out tips and ideas on a regular basis in terms of utilizing the Microsoft software. What are some of those tips that you've been pushing out recently? And how do people, I mean, I know you said they can follow you on social media, but are there any other ways that they can kind of get a, guide to utilizing this software better from you guys?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a bunch of free guides too that we're happy to share. In terms of the tips, I mean, Copilot is the hottest thing right now. People have been really diving into that. So most of them are focused around Copilot and Excel, hence the name. But we do have other tips and tricks in regards to AI and all the other core Microsoft Office products as well. So if you follow us, you'll see that every day there's new tips shared just from what we're seeing from working with a wide range of organizations. And we've trained millions of people around the world. So we've kind of seen like the tips that stick most with them and the tips that they enjoy most. So we're constantly sharing those as well. Um, but I would say yes. Most of it is just around, and I see a question in the chat too about concrete examples. Most of it is around being able to speed up workflows and also summarize data faster, work with the tool in your natural language to get specific ideas done. I would say that's the bulk of it.
Yeah, I mean, Kathy, some of the places where we've started kind of playing around with some of the tools. We can basically get a data dump of a client's trial balance or their detailed general ledger and go through and analyze that detailed general ledger using Excel. One of the things we do when we do our audits every year is, we get a listing of every single journal entry that the organization has posted and we give Excel certain parameters and I'm sorry, Copilot certain parameters, and Copilot goes through and it identifies any journal entries that meet those parameters, which means that those are ones that are maybe higher risk journal entries that we want to look at and explore because that might be a situation where maybe there's an incorrect posting or potential for fraud or concerns. So there are definitely ways that you can kind of use it for that. I've been using, I had a client reach out and send me a copy of their lease agreement. And I floated through Copilot and I said, I am the lessee in this agreement. Please go through this lease agreement and tell me everywhere that I should be concerned as the lessee before I sign this lease agreement. In addition, tell me where there's any insurable risk issues that I need to communicate with my insurance carrier to ensure that all of my risks are mitigated through the policy and my insurance carriers, considering all of the things that are important to me with respect to this lease, because it was an organization that works with children. Um, and it produced a really nice report. It outlined all of the different areas where there were potential risks that existed within the lease that they were able to bring back to the landlord and say, I'm not signing this lease unless some of these things are addressed. And there was an actionable bunch of items that we shipped off to the insurance carrier and said, please ensure that these items are covered under the insurance policy that we're carrying. And if not, please explain why we don't need them. So there's some really, really cool stuff you can do with these tools now.
Yeah,
It's great.
the opportunity is.
Marianne Conway said, I did not find it user-friendly for formatting, saving Word documents. They didn't test this on writers. I want the save as back without it automatically saving to OneDrive, and then I have to move it to where I want it in my computer, creating extra steps. Thoughts, Mike?
Yes, there are still many changes that they're making on a daily basis to make it more efficient. Um, what I would love to do is take this feedback, share it with Kat and my team, and potentially escalate that up to Microsoft as well. But yeah, I would say there's still things that they're ironing out for sure, but it's getting better and better every day. Um, and there are processes that may create extra steps, but I do think that'll be better in the near future.
Yeah, going back to Kathy, I see you wrote thanks there, but one of the things that I do now is, there's not a whole lot of things I don't kind of, even if I have an answer, I'll run it through Copilot just to maybe be able to say it better.
Mhm.
Um, I know that there was something that came up recently that um, there was a situation where we were trying to, or one of the organizations we're involved in was trying to put some wording together to send to the governor's office. And I ran it through Copilot, and it created a document that kind of considered it not just from here's the points, but it put the points in a format that kind of created an appropriate argument as to why the governor should listen. Again, it's really cool because it can do so much more than we think, and it can do it in so much less time. I mean, things that used to take me a couple hours are now taking me 10 and 15 minutes.
It's incredible. Yeah, and I think you brought up a great point too. If you're looking for a better way to do something, you could just ask it, what's the best way to do this? This is my end goal. And in a process like that, Marianne, I'm not sure if you tried or not, but Copilot is brilliant beyond measure. You could even just ask it, hey, is there a better way to do this? And it'll tell you step by step breakdown. So I think that that might be helpful for you.
Yeah, and like I said, I honestly I have to close my door half the day because I'm sitting there having conversations with Copilot, because it's not just I ask it a question, but what's great about it is it always gives you prompts at the end of it. Would you like me to do this with the
Right.
information? Would you like me to do this informa with the information? Have you considered this? Have you considered that? Or, I'll read through it and I'll say, I'll go on 16 different tangents and it'll give me a whole bunch of information. I'll get to the end of it and I'll say, now take all of this information that you've been spitting out and put it in one cohesive document. And it does. It's like so cool.
I know. It's almost like you're talking to yourself all day, but you're really not. Things are just getting better and better with it. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm doing most of the directives through the microphone as opposed to typing. I type really slow. I talk really fast. So anytime you can use the microphone, at least anytime I can use the microphone, it's going to be a much better thing for me. I'm really old and have clumsy fingers. So
I do too. And I realize too, when I'm speaking to it through the microphone, my thought and my idea kind of expands and goes deeper versus when I'm typing, I think kind of in a singular route. This is just what I want to get done. But then I start thinking, well, could you also do this? And this is how I want it. And I found that the output's been much better like that. When you're more specific and more direct with it, it will get to the bottom of exactly what you're looking for. So whether you're typing or speaking through your microphone, I would definitely encourage anyone out there who's using it to just be as specific as possible. I don't think you could be too specific. And one thing that I love is I'll ask it, here's my goal. What's the best way to prompt you so that you can get me there? And it'll give me the exact prompt to use. And then I just kind of fill in the blanks. So that's been amazing.
I also give it the background of like what I'm trying to do. So like if I'm sitting there, and I know this turned to Copilot, which wasn't necessarily where I was supposed to go, but it's still cool. I'll give it prompts in terms of I'm an accountant or I own a 4410 school or
Right.
I am whatever. And I'll give it the prompt so it knows where to kind of put this from a perspective. Or I'll say, look, I'm interested with respect to the Nonprofit Revitalization Act and NITMIFA or whatever the rules or regulations are that I'm trying to filter it through so that it kind of understands, what perspective I'm coming from.
Absolutely.
In terms of feeding Copilot information, what I normally do is I just pull and drag and drop. I drag and drop, drag and drop, drag and drop. It's the easiest way to do it. We have certain software that doesn't work effectively with Copilot. So what I'll do is I'll email files to myself, and then I'll just take it from Outlook and just drag and drop it right into Copilot. And you know, Copilot then has the document. The other thing I'll do is if I get an email coming in, I'll just reference, I'll say, there was an email that came in from such and such person at such and such time. Go back and look at that email. And with respect to that email, please do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'd recommend too. I mean, when we train companies on this type of stuff, it's pretty on par with what we're saying as well.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind is from a tool perspective, if you are using AI, you do want to make sure that if you're using AI, you're using AI that's not in an open architecture and that you're using AI that is just limited to your facility, your operation, so that that information is not being shared with the rest of the internet. I don't know,
I
Mike, if you want to talk about that a bit more.
I can't stress that enough, especially if you're dealing with confidential information or things for clients and customers. One thing that I've done is I've actually created what's called a sandbox folder. So, excuse me, instead of having AI have full range of my computer and everything I have on there, I have a sandbox folder and it only has access to that folder and the documents in that folder. So I've kind of like pre-approved what it has access to. And it may sometimes ask for access for other things, and I just say no, because I don't think we're at the point yet with AI where we can trust it with everything. I think that there are some things that you still want to keep kind of guarded, just if you're in an open loop AI structure, and that information can go anywhere. It's a little bit scary, I think, still.
Yeah, yeah, and again, you just have to really be careful. And again, this goes back also to, if you are using AI, and I know this isn't really the topic for today, but if you are using AI, you really should have an acceptable use policy and everything else that goes with AI. Just have AI create it for you. And just make sure though that you are, really following that. You don't want to be sharing information. You do have to be careful when you're, it's not just Marion intellectual property and stuff like that. There's HIPAA issues, there's FERPA issues, there's, all sorts of different things that you can deal with that you just have to be careful of. Another question, Mike, how do you limit its access to that one folder if it's part of our Microsoft system?
I would think it depends on your particular system and the way it's set up. I would encourage you, if you're part of an organization, ask your HR team to double check that for you specifically. But for what I did, I created a separate folder within my system. And you could ask the AI, how do I link only this one folder to you so that you have access to only this folder? And it'll tell you. But each organization is different, and I don't really want to give a blanketed answer, but I will say it's a pretty great way of navigating it.
Um, so Patricia asked, how do people integrate all the tools of Microsoft 365? So you have like task calendar teams, how do you integrate all of that stuff to create a more organizational efficiencies?
This might not be the answer that you want to hear, but it is that simple. You could literally just ask it and it will tell you exactly what to do. It'll even prompt you to link in certain folders, or it'll tell you exactly the information that it needs. So if you're ever wondering how to do something like that, I personally think the easiest way is just tell the AI, this is what I want to do. Please let me know what information or what details you need me to link it to.
Great. So if someone who's listening today um, knows their organization is only scratching the surface of Microsoft 365, what are the smartest next steps for them to take?
Yeah. So going back to the idea before where most Microsoft Office features are completely unused. So what are the next best steps to take? I would think about what are the most time dragging workflows that your organization has today, that your employees are encountering today. And I would speak with your teammates particularly. What's a pain for them? What do they not look forward to every week? And one thing you could do is either ask Copilot or AI, what's the best way to speed this up? Another thing to do is actively seek training. I always kind of relate it to driving and the road test. People, just because they pass their road test doesn't mean that they're great drivers. And most people think that they are, and that's totally fine. Not a problem about that. But I'm just saying there's additional training and there's additional thought process and things that you have to develop that may come with experience or may come from practicing the right habits, and they might not appear right away. So I would say actively seek training and think about training that your team will actually enjoy doing. I know I mentioned that before, but I can't stress that enough. I think it's super important that your teammates really enjoy it and they look forward to the training because they realize what's on the other side of it.
Going back to Patricia's question, she gave us a clarification. She said, like, without using AI, how do I, build tools into the everyday structure of what I'm doing?
Yeah. So, how do people integrate all the tools of Microsoft 365? Do people use task, calendar, teams to create more organizational efficiencies? Yes. And yes, they do use those to create more organizational efficiencies and to integrate all those tools. So, um, you would essentially what I would do is I would ask Copilot, if you're saying without AI at all, that's again where the training comes in. If you're just looking to create more efficiencies from a manual perspective, that's a whole Pandora's box type question. There's a lot that goes into that, but I would say seek the right training if you're looking to create more efficiencies manually without all that. Um, and I know that's kind of what I said to what we were just talking about rather, but yeah, there are so many ways now where you can streamline your approach and may not even have to use AI, but it's just about knowing what's possible.
Yeah, and then one of the other things I know, Mike, we were talking about, what organizations can do in terms of smartest next steps. We also talked about, earlier the whole aspect of user groups and communicating efficiencies that are found within the organization and kind of build that into your culture in terms of,
Mhm.
having that open communication about, where people have found better ways to build a mousetrap. So
Yeah.
we are running out of time. So Mike, thank you so much. This was incredibly insightful. I know our audience is walking away with some very practical takeaways, so that's great. And thank you everyone who joined us this afternoon. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us. If you have any follow-up questions or would like to continue the conversation, please don't hesitate to reach out to us or to Mike. And Mike, if you can once again share how people can reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on social media, it's miss.excel. So Miss Excel. And if you have any other questions, feel free to send us a DM on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever it may be. But I would also like to end with thank you, Ken. Thank you for having me here today, and thank you everyone for being here.
And everyone, we will be sharing the recording, and be sure to keep an eye out for future Cerini Connection webinars where we continue to bring you timely topics and practical insights. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great afternoon. Take care,
Bye.
everyone.